Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday Night Live from our New Mexico Philharmonic. Tonight, composer Daniel Steve Crafts will join me to share about his works and his life. Daniel has composed over 15 symphonies, concertos, operas, and has even won an Emmy Award for one of his pieces. We'll start by watching a selection from his opera, Too Much Coffee Man. Let's watch that.
So now my chance, I'll step up to the plate. At last I'll try to go, to change my fate. And our love, powerful, beautiful, indestructible, dove. It's all so clear, we were meant to be together, like dirty pikers in their wardrobes of black leather. Coffee shop primarily because I love you.
I'm not paid enough to put up with this crap, especially from a costumed, come-wearing little sap. I ain't no one's sidekick, I won't go for a ride. Instead I'll say no, and promptly kick you in the side. Yeah!
I'm wounded, your strength is wondrous. If I could catch my breath, I'd sing about it. It's so very true. Even though you're brazen, I'm still in love. I'm still in love with you. I love you. Love you.
And here's my guest for tonight's show, composer Daniel Stephen Crafts. Good evening, Daniel.
Good evening to you. It's good to see you, Roberto.
Great to see you. Thank you for being with us tonight. And we just heard this really wonderful selection from Too Much Coffee Man, your gonzo opera. Tell us, what does that all mean?
Well, it's a kind of a funny story of how it came about. Shannon Wheeler has done the comic strip Too Much Coffee Man for some 20 years. He's an old friend, and years ago we were having dinner in San Francisco, and we thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to do something together? But what would we do? He draws comic books, I write serious classical music. Well, the idea came up of doing an opera on Too Much Coffee Man, and we both thought it was a terrible idea, and we completely forgot about it. Then some weeks later, Shannon had a dream that his characters were singing opera to him. And he got up in the middle of the night and he sketched out some lyrics and a basic scenario and sent it to me. And I thought it was hilariously funny, but I had no idea what we'd ever do with it. And so I wrote it, but really just for the fun of it. I never expected anything to come with it. Well, he's up in Portland, Oregon, and he got the Portland Center for the Performing Arts behind it. They hired people from the Portland Opera. We put it on, and to everybody's amazement, it was a huge success. It was scheduled to run for 2 weeks. It ran for 3, would have run for 4, but the theater was already booked. Then, if you can imagine this, then he took it down to Comic-Con in San Diego, that gigantic comic festival, international comic festival, and people loved it down there. Imagine doing an opera at Comic-Con. But people kept coming up saying things like, well, I thought I hated opera, but this is great. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
It really looked a lot of fun, and it sounded a lot of fun. Now,
what
you
I'm
now
proud
live.
of- Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
What I'm proud about it is it's genuine opera. It's not parody, it's not pastiche, it's not musical. It needs trained opera singers, but put into wild and crazy characters that you'd never expect in traditional opera. Well, now I've written 10 gonzo operas with a number of different librettists. And we have a company here in Albuquerque. Of course, it's on hold. It has been on hold for the last year, but I'm in the process of setting up a company in San Francisco and one in New York, whenever we can kind of get things back to normal. But it is so much fun, Roberto, because it combines the two things that I love most: beautiful voices and social political satire. And
you write so beautifully for the voices. You're actually a composer that still uses melodies in traditional harmony, which I love. So it's delightful to be able to hear modern opera that way.
Well, actually, that leads me into the next selection that we're going to hear. I was fortunate enough to meet the great American tenor Jerry Hadley, who passed away some years ago. I met him in San Francisco, and we hit it off really well, particularly because we had similar ideas about contemporary music, what it should be and what it should not be. And one of the things I said to Jerry in the very beginning was, I said, for any music, any genre of music, or works to get into the repertory and stay into the repertory, there are 3 reasons: melody, melody, memorable melody. Think about your favorite pieces of music, and I'll bet you it's because of the melody. Well, Jerry loved that. Well, then he said, after we talked a while, he said, well, you know, I've recently put out a call for scores. And he said, I got over 200 scores. And he said, I went through them all very carefully. And I'll be honest, I didn't find anything that I thought I was interested in doing. But send me some of your music. Okay, of course I did. And a couple of months later, he called me back and he said, my God, you really do write melody. People say they do, but you really do. And I want you to write for me. And so that was the beginning of our collaboration. The next time he came through San Francisco, where I was living from San Francisco, he had a volume of the poetry of Carl Sandburg. And he had a great affinity for the work of Carl Sandburg because they both grew up in the plains, the prairie of Illinois.
Mhm.
And so in this volume, he had underlined all the passages that had a particular resonance for him and asked me if I could write a piece based on those. And so that became a work called The Song and the Slogan, which is a line from the Sandburg poetry.
And that's the video we're gonna watch right now.
Yes, I think of it as a kind of a concerto for voice and orchestra. It's about 35 minutes long. And what we're going to see is a clip from it was made into a program for PBS. This is a clip from that.
Let's watch it.
I was born on the prairie, and the milk of it sweet, the red of its clover, the eyes of its women gave me a song. Nothing so much as one more sunrise or a sky moon on fire, doubled to a river moon of water. And I know in the night I rest easy in the prairie arms, on the prairie heart.
That looked absolutely gorgeous, Daniel. And I understand you guys won an Emmy Award for the music, right?
We were very, very privileged to win an Emmy for that. Yeah, but with the voice of Jerry Hadley, how can you go wrong?
Exactly. But I love the setting and the instruments, you know, I mean, and everybody in costumes. What's that period costumes that they were wearing? What's the date?
That would be Sandberg's time. It would be in the 30s or 40s, rural Illinois. Rural Illinois.
Wow.
So,
Looked absolutely gorgeous, and the music is so melodic. And you know, and I mean, how did you get all the instruments there? The piano. I mean, you were lucky you had good weather, right?
it was a logistical nightmare, quite frankly.
I imagine.
Actually, I think I wasn't there for the recording of that, but I think it was just off the rest stop on a highway through Illinois that they found a place where it would actually work. But they spent a lot of time on the video, and it came out quite well.
Now, Daniel, you now live in beautiful Albuquerque, one of the most gorgeous cities I know in the world. But where are you from originally?
Well, I spent most of my life in San Francisco, the Bay Area. Really, I go back there all the time. I haven't been back in a year for obvious reasons, but San Francisco, I do think of. But of the two places I could pick in the country, I think it would be San Francisco and Albuquerque, New Mexico. Certainly.
Well, we're very lucky to have you as resident of our great city. And I can't wait to be back, you know, in Albuquerque. It's been over a year already.
Please, yes, please. We need you.
Now, the next selection we're going to watch is from your opera La Llorona. Tell us about this piece.
Well, I was very lucky to work with the great Chicano novelist Rudolfo Anaya, who passed away, I guess, about a year and a half ago now. We became great friends, and I miss him terribly. When I first met him, he said to me, "Oh, you write operas?" I said, "I have a play that I think would make a great opera." And I said, "Please, let me see it." And it turned out to be his play of La Llorona, the classic Mexican legend. Now, to Hispanic culture, La Llorona is as common as, say, Cinderella is to Western culture. But no one had ever done an opera on it before, so I got the first crack at it. I was very privileged to be able to do that. And so we took his one-act play, and that became a 3-act opera. And
wow.
It's been done in excerpt form any number of times. We did stage excerpts at the National Hispanic Cultural Center in 2009, I guess it was. And then what you're going to see is a clip from a concert performance in Santa Fe in 2012. I'll set up the aria a little bit. Malinche is the woman who was the consort of Cortez as he was conquering the Aztecs. And by the way, the term, the name La Llorona means the crying woman, the wailing woman, translated. Well, this is 10 years or so after the conquest of the Aztecs, and they've had a child together. And now the child has come of age, and Cortez wants to take him back to Spain to educate him as a nobleman, to make him Hidalgo. Well, Malinche already feels guilty for having helped Cortez conquer her people. The last thing she wants is to continue this with turning their son into yet another conqueror. And so she protests. But in this very dramatic scene, before we begin here, finally he just says to her, "I am the man. What I say goes. He comes with me back to Spain, and that's it." And he storms out. And at this point, Malinche sings her aria of lament that begins, "Once his words were sweet." And this is the glorious, wonderful voice of mezzo-soprano Deborah Domansky. I can't say enough about her wonderful, fabulous, glorious voice. She has fabulous coloratura in the beginning excerpt that we're going to hear, there's not a lot of coloratura, but just this silky, smooth, glorious, wonderful voice that I want you to hear. Deborah.
Oh, I'm looking forward to watching that. Let's do that right now.
His words were sweet, his touch a warm caress. Like a dream I strayed to his I bore his son and mixed my blood with his. I helped him a traitor to my own He's a knife that cuts both ways. Oh, my conquered people,
You're right, Daniel. She has a gorgeous voice. And, you know, I can't wait to hear the next selection, which you recorded with this incredible tenor. Tell us about this set of songs that you've been recording now.
Well, to give you a little bit of background, Jerry Hadley was Leonard Bernstein's hand-picked tenor. And Bernstein spent a great deal of time with Jerry. And Jerry said at one point, "What can I do to repay you for all this?" And Bernstein said, "Pass it on." Well, Jerry took that very seriously, and he picked out one young tenor to take under his wing and teach him everything. And that tenor was Brian Cheney. And Brian has since gone on to become an opera star in his own right. Well, Brian and I have become great friends, especially since Jerry's tragic death.
Where does Brian live these days?
Brian lives in New York. Brian lives in New York, Connecticut, actually, but in the New York area. And so we're doing all this remotely, actually. And this is going to be an album of arias from tenor arias from my various operas. This was a project that Jerry and I had on the drawing board before his death. So in many ways, Brian becomes the artistic inheritor of the projects that I had with Jerry. And one of the things we're featuring particularly are several arias from my opera Adonais. And this is about the poet John Keats. The libretto, I must mention, it's a wonderful libretto written by Carla Maria Verdino Sulwald, who was for many years the personal assistant to Thomas Hampson. That's how I know through Jerry and that. She did a wonderful job of taking the writings, the poetry, the letters of John Keats, and weaving them into more dramatic material of her own creation. And I'm very pleased with how the libretto turned out. The centerpiece of it is the setting of the Keats poem, Bright Star. And Bright Star was a love poem to the love of his life, Fanny. Now, Keats died at the age of 25. I mean, that outdoes Schubert, Mozart, Pergolesi, Bizet. He died at 25 and created all this amazing poetry, up to the age of 25. But Bright Star is such a wonderful piece. It is a love song. It is a love song. And the melody recurs several times during the opera. But this is the recording that we use. We're using, by the way, the BBC Symphony Orchestra.
Really?
Because you can get the sound fonts of the orchestra and then plug them into your work. So
amazing what technology allows you to do these days, huh? That's incredible.
Recording with orchestra rather than just piano reduction, which would lose so much.
So we're going to hear The Bright Star by Daniel Steve Crafts. But before that, I want to thank you for participating in our program, Daniel. Such a pleasure to see you, and looking forward to see you in Albuquerque anytime soon. Thank you so much for sharing your great music with us.
Same here, Roberto. I look forward to seeing you. Well, I hope it won't be too terribly much longer, but
thank you everybody for joining us for this show tonight. Remember, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next week. Good night.
Star, would I were steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendor hung aloft the night, and watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, the sleepless Semite, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human shores, or gazing on the new soft fallen mask upon the mountains and the moors. No, yet still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed upon my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in a sweet unrest. Still, to hear her tender taken breath, and so live ever